It's gross.
I need a place to put it. Remind me to pick it up before I go.
Buddy?
I'm really sorry.
So we're going to be talking about Corona today.
I had chocolate milk for lunch. It's really flabby.
Well, welcome to the LWCast, where we talk about all the things that we'd love to talk about on Sunday, but we just don't have time.
And even other things.
Today we have three things. We're going to talk a little bit about what's going on in our lives that is so essential to parents.
Oh, yeah,
and
parents.
It's about how much would you pay to get away from those kids.
Oh, wow. Out of a pandemic.
For a week. Third thing is we want to talk about the importance of community and church coming out of the pandemic
Absolutely,
as well.
yep.
Anything else
But not
going on
shorts.
in your life other than the sandals about to be broken
Well,
out
we're
here?
trying to get the baseball team together, and we had like 4 inches of snow the other day.
Yeah, that was so weird.
Isn't that wild?
I think that happened kind of across most of the country
It did.
here.
It did. A lot of the Midwest.
Yeah. That
So,
woke
but
up
that's
and it
it's
was like,
April. It's Ohio. They said there's been
It
snow
ain't
on the ground in May. So,
oh, I hope not.
yeah, it was kind of. I love snow, but that was pretty terrible.
New with me is basically just I've been playing video games a lot with some friends right
Cool.
now.
Yeah.
There's a new game out called Outriders.
Outriders. Haven't heard of it.
I'm all about the Outriders right now.
Okay.
So
I'll ask Grady about that if he knows anything about it. Is that
probably
like an
doesn't,
adult
and
video
I
game?
and I would not suggest him playing that. It's got a lot of gore and violence.
Okay.
In it, so.
Sounds
Well,
good.
I have a question. Speaking of kids and not letting them play video games or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I ran across a little bit of a poll this week, and I thought it was a very interesting poll.
Okay.
It caught my attention. It was one of those, what do you call them when they catch your attention?
Clickbait.
Clickbait. Yeah, it was
Clickbait.
a little bit of a clickbait for me because I am a parent. And it said, how much would you pay to escape your kids for a week after a year being in a pandemic?
Oh, so it's pandemic related. We're coming out of a pandemic, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so we'll talk about that. But
So this is on average. How much would you pay to escape your kids for a week? They are off doing something. I don't know what.
well, it's hard for me to say because
got a babysitter.
I don't understand it. Well, my kid's a little older, but also we haven't been penned up, right? Some people have had like no school for their kids, the whole shebang. They've had their kids every day for a year.
Okay.
That would change how I might feel.
Okay.
Okay. So do you want me to give you a number?
Give
How
me a
much would I
number.
pay?
For a week. Just a
For
week.
a week?
Just a week. Just you.
I'm
Escaping your kids.
$250. I'm cheap.
$250.
$250. $50 a day for 5 days is a max.
Okay. Well, this poll did a lot in every single state.
Okay.
And in Ohio, because we'll start with Ohio because
Okay.
we live in Ohio.
In Ohio.
And that makes sense.
OH.
So the poll said that the average parents would spend to get away from their kids for a week was $585
$585.
to leave their parents or they leave their kids for a week. If you're looking at on the lest side, Kentucky raked in there.
Kentucky, $250.
No. $450.
Is there anybody who's $250? What state am I from?
They said the national average was around $875.
Wow, like $1,000. So like California is probably $1,500.
Pennsylvania parents were like willing to spend $890.
Well, you
so
know
they're
why?
pretty close to
Well,
us.
they had a tough one. Like Michigan and Pennsylvania had tough restrictions. So I bet you they're
Well, guess
higher.
how much Michigan is?
$927.
So remember, we are, what did I say we were? $585, right?
They'd pay. Okay.
So Michigan parents
$927.
would pay $592.
Oh, a little bit more. Not much.
So not much. Indiana, on the other hand, would cough up an average of $661. Wow. Now, those are all pretty, national averages
Yeah.
or whatever. Let's go to the highest. Do you have any idea where the highest would be? Which parents are like, man, we need to get out of this house and we're willing to pay a fortune?
I think you said California already, right? So
I didn't say California. That was you.
I would say California would be number one, or maybe New York.
Well, you are incorrect.
Okay.
It was West Virginia.
No.
Parents apparently are burnt out from their kids and will spend a whopping $2,448 to get away, which is the highest in the country.
That doesn't make any sense per capita, man, for
I'm
incomes
just saying.
and stuff.
They're like, we are done with these kids being indoors. Like, get them out of here.
Maybe it doesn't have anything to do with the pandemic. That's just what they would pay anytime to get rid of their kids.
2,000 and almost like let's say 2,500 because it's
Listen,
2,448.
if that was for one kid, I could say bring him to my house. I would take care of a kid for $2,400
for a week.
Yeah, anybody that wants to do that, 1 week, one kid, $2,400, I'm on it.
Yeah, well,
I'll entertain them.
I mean, if you're in Ohio, though, you're willing to spend $585.
Right.
So those STEMI checks, that's what they're going for right there. Like,
Child
get us
care.
away from our kids for a little bit.
Well, it's just really cool. for this kind of sense of coming out of the pandemic. I think there's some good things happening, and I know that our particular area, it's all relevant to the area that you're in.
Mm-hmm.
But for us, we're really emerging from the pandemic. Less masks, more freedom, all those kind of things. We're seeing some really good things. But I know it varies throughout the country. But there's
It
something.
even varies throughout Ohio.
Oh, much so. Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
But I think there's some really good things that are going to come from it, emerging back out in terms of talking together, communicating, being in community, wanting to be a part of church again, or part of things that you were missing before, any type of community stuff. So it's almost like it's creating a revival, not just in the spiritual sense, but just a revival of let's get back out and do some of these things. I think it's been important to be respectful of each other's opinions and all that kind of stuff, but I think we just have to, for me, I see this as a benefit that we're on the front edge of leading out of it, and hopefully everybody else will be following that pretty soon, and just the freedom that comes with it, and it's fun to emerge from this. And I would just say, even at a church level, what we're experiencing at a Living Water level is just seeing a lot of people giving their lives to Jesus, being baptized, being alive. I think worship's more vibrant,
Yes.
coming back together. I just think there's a lot of great aspects that we're going to capitalize on. There's I call it the big mo, right? Momentum. The big mo, just like
I think you think that's cool.
just
but-
it is cool. Just like that's what Dickie V would say in a basketball game, baby. So it's just that idea of momentum, and we get a chance to be a part of that. And
in any such scenario or whatever, it's good to get plugged back into community,
Yep.
whatever that might look like.
Right.
I think a lot of the conversations that I've been a part of and been having with people is like, okay, we've had this state for so long, this state of just being in a pandemic, being quarantining, whatever. We need to figure out how to influx life back into us.
Right.
And whether that's like, joining a book club or
Yeah.
I don't know, whatever it might
Yeah.
be. But church is a great way to influx life.
Yeah,
back
I'd throw a
into
plug
that.
into that. If you're Living Water connected, come check things out again if you haven't, or whatever church you're a part of.
Yeah, what's really cool is coming out of the pandemic, we had a baptism Sunday just this last week. And in my 11 years, we have never had so many signups for baptism and then spontaneous baptisms of just like in the moment, people saying, I want to choose to follow after
Yeah,
Jesus.
35 altogether between two campuses.
Yeah.
It was great.
And you can just kind of sense that people are like, man, this is me trying to get my life back in order. This is me trying to say, like, I want to follow after something that's bigger than myself.
Right.
And it's been exciting. Like, it's been exciting to be at church and watch that last week. And,
You know what? The tale of two cities, or there's two stories to this, or two sides to this. One is we get to see that vibrancy and the emergence of people at the church, coming back and being a part. The other side, for some folks who've experienced this now, they're really asking the question, at least this is what I've heard when I've spoken to people, is why would I come back? They don't say it quite that way to me anyway, but there's that sense of, well, we've been okay without it for a year. Why would I be back? Especially, why would I come back to church?
like, last Sunday would have been an amazing Sunday for me to come back to, because I think that's the first time I've experienced community and like that, the vibrancy of what God is doing in people's lives. But prior to that, like, if I wasn't working at a church, I don't know if I would have been in the same scenario.
It's been a grind for you.
It's been a grind to say, like, what is the value of going to church and being in community?
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of people asking that question, and I don't know if they'll be back. And that makes me nervous for them, because I think community with believers is very important. I don't know how well you can say I'm a follower of Jesus without a community of believers that you're engaged in. Now, it doesn't have to be Living Water or a church that looks like Living Water. It can look like a small house church or a group. But where are you really talking about Jesus, worshiping together, and being encouraged and challenged? And if you're not, it's very hard to have a walk with Christ and not have that. In fact, biblically, that would be to the level of a sin, because you're disobeying that sense of what God's asked us to do.
Yeah. I would even say before pandemic, there was a lot of people who would always say things like, well, I don't go to church, but, I pray and I read my Bible, or, I have a somewhat of a relationship with God. And even before the pandemic, there was always just that sense of like, well, how are you worshiping together with people? How are you spurring one another on? Like, these are things in the Bible that talks about, like,
Right.
you have to be part of a community.
Right.
You have to suffer with that community.
Yeah.
You have to grow with that community. You have to love in that community. And
So I think that mindset was there. It's been there for a long time. It was growing steadily, slowly and steadily. The pandemic kind of catapulted that. And I've actually been praying for and thinking about what's it mean for Living Water or any church to connect with those who don't feel like they really need it. What's our responsibility, our role? I can't just say, well, it's good here, forever shows up, and, whatever for you. But I think we have a responsibility to create something, an environment, an invitation, whatever it is, to say we'd love to have you back. Let me ask you this question, because I know you've thought about it. If somebody says, I've been fine for a year without church, why should I come back? What's your answer to them? I mean, I know the biblical answer you just gave, right?
Yeah.
But what do you say to somebody who's like, why should I come back? What do you say?
It honestly breaks my heart more
Yeah.
than anything. So when I'm in that moment, I'm not as emotional as I am right now.
Right.
But I usually give them just things like, like it's great. It's being together. It's encouraging one another. It's singing songs together. It's reminding me, like, when people sing around me, there's just this presence of, like,
Yeah, it's good.
peace in God. But it's really hard because I want these people to experience life transformation through Jesus. And I believe that it can happen outside of a church.
Sure.
Because God works through so many different things. But I think when you're surrounding yourself with a body of believers, when you're surrounding yourself with people who are saying and challenging you to different levels of your faith, that's when true change happens.
Yeah.
Or it happens quicker and more readily and at a greater increments when you're surrounded by a community.
Yeah. There's certain things that can happen at church together that can't happen anywhere else. And one is that worship all together.
Yeah.
One is some of those moments where something's said or done where you can just sense God's in the middle of it, and you get to be a part of that.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I've had people come up to me after church services or things like that and be like, man, in that moment when you guys were playing this song and you were singing this lyric or whatever, like, God just spoke to me and moved, and, like, it was like the band was phenomenal. Thank you. And I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, well, that was when we messed up that solo really bad, and, like, I wasn't even singing on pitch.
I feel like everything was going wrong.
But, like, there's just those moments where the Holy Spirit works through that.
Yeah, I think it's more likely to happen in a group environment where people invite that in. And the other thing I say to folks or people that ask that is, when you intentionally give some time up during your week to do this, it makes a statement to the Lord about who He is in your life. It's kind of like that giving aspect with your income. Like, I'm going to give this to God because I know He gave it to me. And there's just something that happens when you set that time aside. But the church is I think there's a uniqueness to the church that it's just some really good things can happen as we gather.
I do have one question that's kind of church related before we wind things up, or do you want
before
to
we
talk about
end
some more
episode
things?
8? No, we're good.
No,
I think we got the conversation moving. I'll just say this real quick. Man, if you know some folks who haven't been around for a while to your church or your community of believers, don't hesitate just to reach out and invite them back, tell them you love them, and just give them that little nudge, because maybe that's all they need. That's all I'd say. So I'm done with that.
And one of the questions I get all the time, this is inside information
I'm
right
ready.
here.
I have no idea what this is. Okay.
So we do this where we put them up on the screens, and you see all the people, and they're getting baptized, and you take them under the water and baptize them. There's this moment where it's like Draymond Green coming up to KD, and you're like you've ever seen that meme where he's like talking to KD or whatever, and he's like saying some words or whatever, and everyone just makes like, well, he probably said this or whatever.
Say? Yeah.
When you guys baptize, there is like these moments where you're like speaking into these things, and you see people, and they're like, oh,
yeah.
What are you saying in those moments?
That is totally okay. So I kind of have a bit of a speech that I would give if I'm not sensing anything from God. So I'll just say, hey, just remember, this is just an amazing act of when you go under that water, you're leaving your old life behind, you're coming up fresh and new and clean. So that's kind of my go-to. But just about every time I'm talking to somebody, in the midst of that statement, there's something else they need to hear. Like I'll just like, the story you shared today, that's changed people's lives. And you need to share that story more, and it will change people's lives. And you say that in that moment, You're like, I'm tearing up now. It's one of those times that really it's like a thin place between heaven and earth.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get to baptize, you get to hear what might God be saying to you to say to them.
Mm-hmm.
And if you hit that, which we do often, that's when it's like you can just tell it makes this incredible difference. So every single one's different. It has to do a little bit with the baptism process, but it has to do with what you sense for that person and speak into that person. If you haven't been baptized, you want to know what that is, you'll get your own, it's unique every time.
So if there's a next step that you can take away from this, we do not care. Hear us. We do not care if you come to Living Water. Like, that is not our plug here. I mean, if you live in our area or if you want to watch our online
I'd love for
campus,
you to come, but
sweet. But it is so important that you get plugged back into a body of believers wherever you're at. Yep. Even if you've gone to Living Water and you're watching this and you're like, I don't really want to go back, that's fine. Get plugged into a community of believers, because that is the most important thing that you can do.
It's kingdom. It's bigger.
So this has been episode 8, and we have so many more things ahead that we want to talk about.
Absolutely. We got a big old list. Good
we
stuff.
do. We have a big old Google Doc list that we add in.
And
things.
when relevant,
and if you ever want to hear something, let us talk about
absolutely.
it. Let us know.
I would love that.
We'll add it in our list.
I would love that. Make it tough on us. Give us a tough one.
Like, subscribe.
Smash something.
Smash a button.
Smash
Ring the bell.
something.
Ding, 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 ding.